the Janites and the Sherlockians were the original fangirls. They're us.
They
We're
really
all together.
They really were the original fangirls and fanboys. Janites were probably fangirls. Sherlockians were probably fanboys. Who knows? Like, it's true.
That's amazing. Like, there's been fangirls and fanboys for centuries, you guys.
There really has been. There really has been. Hello, and welcome to the Fangirl Feels podcast. My name's Olivia.
My name's Tanya.
And we are Fangirl Feels, the podcast in which we talk about all our favorite books, movies, shows, any sort of content that gives us all the feelings. And today we're going to talk about fan fiction, which will be so fun. Tanya, how do you feel about fan fiction? What is your perception of fan fiction?
That's a good question. And it'd be a good question to ask our followers, all like three of you. Hey, Mom.
Hey, guys. How you doing?
Because I do feel like it has not a negative perception, but a perception that it's for a younger crowd. Because I know as an example, from Bob's Burgers, Tina has like a fan fiction book that she writes. I forget what it's called, but it's silly, right? It's like she creates it of her own life and like the boys in her life. And so I do feel like that's an example of like what society might think of fan fiction. Like, it's funny and silly, but actually like there's great stories that have come from it. And so I'm glad we're talking about this topic.
Yeah, we're here to break the stigma around fan fiction. But yeah, it is like, I feel like the stereotypical fan, when you think of fan fiction, yeah, you're thinking of like a nerdy girl who's writing like smut or something, like like a character she likes or something like that, which does exist. Like that, does that exist? Yes. But yeah, it can be actually great literature, turns out.
That's true. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with it, but also it expands past that. Good point.
Yes. But so we're here to talk about fan fiction. But before we do that, we have our typical segment of Fangirl Finds. So Tanya, what have you been watching, reading, or whatever you've been doing lately?
Ooh, the Grishaverse fans are going to enjoy this because I've been reading Six of Crows. I've been listening to it. Yes, after your recommendation, it's literally been in my Libby for years because you've told me about it years ago. And so I started with your first recommendation, ACOTAR, and now I'm moving on to Olivia's other recommendation. So now I'm on Six of Crows. So I can talk about like where I'm at in the series, and we can just continue talking about it until I finish it in our podcast.
Please do. Yes, would love to know where you are.
Yes. So I'm where the gang's all together and they're in the ice court or the ice city. I forget where. I get lost on the names a little bit, those like fine details, because I'm listening to it. I'm like washing dishes while I'm listening to it. So the gang's all together. What had just happened was Matthias and Nina, they're walking in like an ice area. Matthias and Nina and the group see like I'm gonna forget the words. Not Grisha. What do they call people with magical skills?
I think Grisha. Yeah. Oh. Yeah. I think you're right.
I knew that.
You're good.
They come across Grisha, who had been like burned at the stake by Fierdans, who Matthias comes from. And so there's like a fight between Matthias and Nina announces to the group why she had turned Matthias in. And so she doesn't fully explain it, so everyone thinks she's like a traitor, and that's why Matthias is mad. But then as they go on, they unveil? What is the word? They talk about how Matthias forgives her and like he understood why she did it. And so I'm at that point. So they're almost at the ice court, ice city, and the gang's together and people are forgiving each other. So that's good.
Oh, yes, I know. I know where you are. It's so lovely. I love them. You know, Matthias, they're the best. Who's your favorite character so far?
You can't do that to me.
You gotta tell me right now. Who is it?
It's so funny. It's so funny that I'm reading it now after I watched the show first. Because in the show, so Inej is my go-to, right? I'm never not gonna say Inej. Inej is my favorite character because we're also both brown, but beyond that, she is like the most skilled character. Right. One of the most skilled and like down to earth. And like, I love that she has a calming presence to everyone. Like she asks everyone like how they're doing and she's empathetic. And I can see a little bit of like us in her, right? Like we would make sure the group's okay. And we would also question Kaz as a toxic person. But anyways, like beyond Inej, I really do love Kaz, and I'm not sure I would say Kaz if I didn't if I had just watched the show. Like reading about him, I do love that he's crazy. I do, and I do love that I have a backstory for him now that I didn't fully understand in the show. So I have some like more sympathy for him and the story he went through. And then third would be Jesper. Love Jesper. You can't not love Jesper. He's funny.
Yeah, he's hilarious. It's true. Yeah, that's interesting. So do you feel like you understand Kaz's backstory more now, like in the book? Because the show is weird about it. We talked about it briefly in that episode, but yeah, how does it feel now having read it versus watched it? Like,
that's a good question. Yeah. That's true. Watching the show, it's so silly that at first, number one, that they had like the Six of Crows in Alina's story. I'm sure you all were confused, Grishaverse universe. I'm talking to you and everyone else. Because like
here.
they had to pick and choose parts to mesh together in that book, and it didn't always make sense to me. And it doesn't make sense to me even more now, because like they didn't show they should have had the backstory for those characters in that first series, perhaps. Maybe that would have made sense, because they sprinkled it in the second season, and it didn't make sense to me there because they sprinkled it in randomly. They randomly talked about Kaz's issue or his history with his brother and Pekka Rollins. And now reading it, I obviously have more detail, and I've built more sympathy, and I just wish they would have followed the book itself more closely.
Agreed. Yeah. It's like very unclear in the show. I felt. I was like, as a reader, I knew what they were doing, but it was also like, if I hadn't read the books, I don't understand what they're saying with these like little glimpses of like, yeah, what's going on. And like they don't really tell you like why he's wearing gloves. Like they don't tell you any of this stuff. And you're like, what? This is all kind of important to his character and like who he is, and they're just not. They like barely touched it. Yeah.
This is exemplified in our Grishaverse episode a couple months ago, when we talked about the scene where that you love and book readers love between Kaz and Inej, where what did she say? Like, you'll have me or something. And it was a really like
your armor. Yeah.
It was an intimate scene and then like really meaningful, but we didn't get it as show watchers because I thought that they were about to hook up. And so it was totally lost to me at that point.
Yeah. Not like a protective measure. Yeah. Not like what it really meant and like how he was unable to open up. Yeah. It's just, yeah. But I'm happy for you. I'm happy that you're reading it. I'm happy that you like it, because it's not an easy book to start. I say this to everybody who starts it. I'm like, Six of Crows is not an easy start, but it is rewarding once you're in it. But there's an uphill to get through it, I think.
I definitely feel that. And I wonder if it's like, I feel like with fantasy that happens, at least with the fantasy books I've been reading, it's just hard because you have to learn about a new universe, having to learn about like, I luckily knew about the magic system, but like learning the names, and that just took me a while. I agree, but it is rewarding now to see them all together on this heist.
Yeah. And I think the best is yet to come in the rest of the book.
Really?
Yeah,
okay.
I think so. My memory, again, it's been a few years since I've read it, but I'm pretty sure. Yeah, you still got some stuff to come. I'm pretty sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'm hoping I finish it this week. I don't have a lot left, so we can keep talking about this in other episodes.
Yes. Oh, and then when you get to Crooked Kingdom, oh my God. Very excited.
I'll record myself crying because you told me that you and your friend cried when you read that book.
Literally. Yeah. Oh, and then like the last, yeah, I'm so excited for you. It's so good. And like Inej is my favorite character also. So it's very Inej rewarding, I think, later on as well. The whole book is very Inej rewarding, but she's just a great character. I love her a lot.
She deserves the world.
She does. She does. Like literally one of my favorites. And yeah, she is just like a lovely character. She's like empathetic. She's badass. Like she's just great. I love her. I love her, and I love Nina. I do love Nina a lot too. Like, oh, very great. Great characters.
I can understand the Nina love. I think they're slowly building up her personality. She's also a comedic relief, just like Jesper.
She is. Yeah, she's so funny. And she loves waffles, which I relate to. That's like a whole part of her personality. And I'm like, same girl. I get it. Like, she's the best. Yeah, they're all great. Do you know anyone else's backstory yet? I don't remember. if you've gotten.
I have had to look up the names. Like I know that Jesper's from the Zemini region. Like I know the names, but they haven't gone deep. And like obviously they've been talking about Kaz's backstory briefly right throughout because all the chapters are from their own perspective. So
Yeah.
just like little bits. And obviously the backstory between Nina and Matthias is like how far we've gone with those characters. And they've brought up Zoya a little bit as
Right.
like she's this feared person, but she's Nina's friend. Oh no.
Yeah. Yeah, that's where it's like they do talk about characters from the Shadow and Bone series. So it's like, yeah, if you didn't know anything about Shadow and Bone, you're like, who is Zoya? And I remember when I read it, I was like, I don't know who this girl is. Like, okay, Zoya, fine. Like, I think she actually does
forget Zoya's name. Yeah,
yeah,
not important.
She's unimportant. She's important. I'll learn about her later. Like, it's fine. Like when she actually shows up. Yeah, I think watching the show does help because yeah, you know, like the basic premise because I didn't have anything to go off of when I read them besides like I should have read the first series but I didn't, so I'm in there and I'm like, what's going on, who are you?
Oh, you were real lost. Wow.
Yeah. It took me 2 tries to read it actually because the first try I was like, I don't know what's going on, I'm done. And then everyone was like, you gotta just try again. And so then I just kind of like allowed myself to just not be sure of what's going on. And then you kind of just like figure it out. Or you just like, you figure out the things you need to know. Like I didn't know who Zoya was. It's fine. Like that's okay. But
yeah,
you figure out the rest by context clues. Essentially.
That makes sense. Yeah. You just like get through it.
Yeah. I'm like, I know there's magic. I know that. That's fine. That's all I need to know. It's okay. But yay. Well, I'm glad. Very good. Very exciting. Great book. 10 out of 10.
20 out of 10.
20 out of wow.
20, I'm not even done with it.
20 out of 10. Amazing. No, that's good. Yeah, I haven't been reading. I finished a few books on the beach. I told you this. I finished like 2 books on the beach, which I now forget the names of.
Because I wanted to ask you, Olivia, what were they?
Let me look it up. I put them on my Goodreads. Okay, the 2 books I ended up reading on the beach, which is unheard of for me to read 2 books that fast. Again, we talked about this last week. We didn't record this, but like it proved to me that TikTok is the reason why I don't read, because the fact that I like didn't have an internet connection and could finish 2 books just proved to me that like life is the worst and I need to get off TikTok. But anyway, I read I'll Tell You No Lies, which I got an ARC, which is an advanced reader copy, which was fun. This book doesn't come out until like, let's see, I'm like looking it up again. It comes out in August, so I got to read it early, which was kind of fun, and give like an early review. And it's about like a post World War II America. It's like a Cold War story. And it was good. It was fun. It's like a YA historical fiction with like a little bit of romance. Very quick read. I gave it 4 stars. It was pretty good. And then I also read a book called Beyond the Lavender Fields, which is another historical fiction about the French Revolution. This one was a little bit slower. Took me like 3 days to read it. And it's like a love story in the midst of like the French Revolution. And it was like about an aspect of the French Revolution I didn't know about. Like after the queen and king got like kicked out of Versailles. I don't know nothing about the French Revolution, but it was kind of fun to learn a little bit about it with like a little bit of romance. So I'm on like a historical fiction kick. So I will be reading more of those for sure. I'm excited.
That's really cool also that you got an advanced copy. That's because I assume because of your accounts.
Yeah, I like reached out to like Penguin Teen and Random House. I think this was like a Random House book, or no, Macmillan. This was Macmillan. And they send me like books to read. They're actually sending me another one this week, which I'm really excited about, called The Threads That Bind. And it's like a YA fantasy. And I'm like, I'm actually really excited to read this because this looks totally up my alley. And they like are sending me a hard copy. And I'm like, I'm here for it. Let's read this book. But some of these are just Kindle books. Like those 2 books were just like Kindles, and they use something called NetGalley where they'll like send you an ebook for free, and then they'll occasionally send you a hard copy if they're like, we think you'll like this, here's a a hard copy of the book. So it's cool. I think anyone could actually become like a penguin teen influencer. You just got to like reach out to them. I don't think it's
sweet.
that. Yeah, I don't think it's that strict. They seemed pretty receptive. So
that's really cool. Yeah, I love that you're reading historical fiction, and like I love that like the thread between the things that you like is just like romance. Do they kiss? That's what I want to know.
I like a good plot, but yeah, there just has to be romance. I cannot read something without romance involved. Like that just has to be there. I don't know what people are doing if there's not romance in the story. Like, why am I reading this then?
How do you enjoy this? Yeah.
Yeah. Like, what's the point? But I don't know, historical. I just like woke up one morning and I was like, I want to read historical fiction. I've decided this is my personality now. And it's fun. It's worth it. I like it. Because I don't like contemporary novels. I don't like reading about things in like modern times. I find it kind of cringy for whatever reason. Like there's exceptions, but most of the time I find it cringy. So I'm like, I don't know. I just need something that doesn't feel relevant to me right now.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah,
I do for the most part agree with you, but Taylor Jenkins Reid changed my mind about that. So that'll be the only writer who can change.
I've heard a lot about her. Like you've talked about her before. I've not read a single book by Taylor Jenkins Reid. The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo and like Daisy Jones. Those are the two books. I think we talked about that in a previous episode, and I haven't read either of them. I got to. I know The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo is historical fiction. So in theory, I could start there.
If you start that, let me know. That'd be such a great episode. I still remember I can watch a YouTube video of a summary, but it's a fun one. So
you liked it when you read it?
I did. Yeah, I did like it. Not as much as her other books, but I thought it was good. There's 7 romances. So
whoa, so many to choose from.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
I'm just overwhelmed by romance at that point. I actually sometimes don't like that though, because then it's like I just want one. I want to root for one person, and they need to get married and have kids. But they don't need to have kids. They just need to get married.
There's a twist, and I can't tell you. So that's why you got to read it.
Okay. It's on my to read, like on my Goodreads, but one day. I
just added Threads That Bind to my list because the cover alone, I am going to judge this book by its cover. It looks great.
I know, doesn't it? I'm super excited. I have the ebook because they sent me but then they're sending me the hardcover, and I'm like, I'm excited. This looks awesome. And it's like, it's described as I have to look it up again. It's like described as like Percy Jackson and something else. Like they've just like they use like books I love to kind of describe it, and I'm like, I'm here for it. Give me that. That's what I want. Like,
yeah, especially you with the Percy Jackson connection.
Yeah, I'm like, I would love to reread Percy Jackson for the first time again. What a fun series! And then I forget what other book they compared it to, but I remember I was like, I like that book.
Song of Achilles, I've read that one. I don't know if you haven't. I love that one, so I'm in too. Here we go.
Yeah, Song of Achilles, great. Yeah, so I'm like, this sounds very up my alley. Love Greek mythology, historical, like young adult fiction. I'm all for it. Like, done. To read. We'll be reading. I actually need to put it on my this one to read. There we go. But I'm waiting. Yeah, I'm waiting till the hardcover. Even though I technically have the Kindle copy. I should just start reading it. But I'm like, oh, they're sending me a hardcover. I want to wait so I can like open up the hardcover.
There's something magical about that. Yeah.
There is. So yeah, we can move on to the main topic for today, which is about fan fiction. So Tanya, I know you shared a little bit of your like perception of fan fiction. But I wanted to talk a little bit about the history of it and like where it came from. Since I don't think it's an interesting history, and I like having done the research, I'm like, oh, interesting. I didn't know this about fan fiction at all. Did you read fan fiction growing up?
Ooh, good question, because I know you did.
Yeah.
I want to say that I did, but I just don't remember because I was super into Avatar: The Last Airbender. And like I want to say I saw things or read things, but just didn't get deep into it. And also Harry Potter, right? Like we were in the age of like young YouTubers or early YouTube days, and there were like spin-offs of like of fan fiction. It's like the one thing that I know that I watched was a Harry Potter musical, which is like a form of fan fiction of Harry Potter. So otherwise, not really. How about you?
Fair. Yeah. Oh, I did. Yeah, that's like what I discovered fan fiction at a young age, I think. And like I was on this website called DeviantArt, which still exists today. Like it's still around, but this was like 2004, 2005, and that was like my first experience with fan fiction. It's like I ended up on that site looking up Danny Phantom stuff because that was like I was obsessed with it as a kid. And then I found Harry Potter fan fiction, and then it moved on from there. I found my old fanfiction.net account, which I haven't been on it in years, but I like doing research for this episode. I like logged back in and it said I joined fanfiction.net in 2008. So, fun
Can we
fact.
still see it?
There's nothing on it. You will see like my favorite, like things I favorited, like favorite stories. But I actually did write fanfiction one time, but I
Girl,
deleted it. I
you
deleted
deleted
it.
it?
Yeah, so it's nowhere to be found. Like, you cannot find it. I actually was kind of sad about it too. I was like, maybe it's like in a draft and I can like pull it out, not to share it, but just like I just want to see it. And I don't even remember what it was. Like I know I wrote something, but I don't remember what it was about. And I can't find it.
Do you
But
remember like even a little bit? Like, was it a love story? Like, what was it about? Like, even based off of?
I think it was Twilight fanfiction.
Oh my gosh.
I think it was Twilight. Yeah, but I don't remember. I don't remember what it was about, and I can't find it. But this is my old fanfiction.net account. I have 163 old stories saved, which is wild. Yeah, it's like it's funny to see. Like, yeah, we can share the screen. It looks like a lot of it was like Danny Phantom fanfiction, and then it moves on to, oh, I guess Percy Jackson. Interesting. That seems
Stop.
kind of young. This was 2009. I didn't read Percy Jackson in 2009. So how does that work? Oh, and then Legend of Korra. That was a lot of Legend of Korra and Avatar: The Last Airbender. And then it just kind of is like a free for all. Some Harry Potter. It's so funny. There's so much in here. I actually remember some of these.
I just Googled Percy Jackson, the movie. The first one came out in 2010. So I wonder if you were hearing about it.
Maybe
So that might be why, right in 2009.
Yeah, because this says the story was published in 2009. But yeah, I literally read Percy Jackson in college, which was like around 2013, 2014. So I don't know what I was doing liking this story. Foreshadowing, I guess.
Right. Yeah, in your life, you didn't even know.
Yeah. I was like, I guess I just liked the story. I don't know. Sometimes that would happen. I would like read a story if it was like popular, even if I didn't know the like fandom it was a part of. That was in like I don't read fan fiction nearly as much as I used to. I read it way more. So yeah, I read it way more then. Now it's more so like if there's something I just like really want to read about, like if like I read some of like The Last of Us fan fiction because I was like, I just want to read Joel and Ellie having fun. So I would read, because sometimes it's just like nice. You're like, I just want to know the story, and I like these characters, and I just want to like watch them do stuff for a little bit longer. Like I'm not ready to give up on them yet. So like fan fiction helps like you gradually like wean yourself off sometimes, you know? You're like, I'm not ready to cut myself off quite yet of the story.
That's a good point. That was my question for you. The reason we like it so much is because, and for same reasons, I think it's like a great way to see the side quests, like continue the universe and the storyline because we miss it so much and we want to see what these other characters would be doing. And they're usually wholesome, at least the ones that I've like looked into, like the ones with Avatar: The Last Airbender. Like, yeah, they connect characters. I think there's one about like Sokka and Zuko, and I just think it's hilarious, but it's wholesome and I love it.
Yeah. I mean they're like two people that didn't have much. Like they had that one episode where, you know, like Zuko's like that's, or Sokka. Wait, so no, Zuko's like that's rough, buddy. Like that everyone
Yes.
quotes to this day. But they didn't have much interaction otherwise. So like, yeah, fanfiction's a great way to, you know, get to see them more. Like you want to see these characters more.
And
Yeah.
especially for you with your morning period, I'm sure that's why you dove into it. You're like, I need this. I
Yes.
need more.
Yeah. I did it a lot also. I read it relatively like during when you mentioned Harry Potter, like Harry Potter was coming out every year. And during that lull, when you had like a break between like the books, I know I would, when I discovered fan fiction during that time, I would like read a little bit of it. Cause I'm like, I'm not, like, I have to wait a year and a half for the next book to come out. This is going to like help heal the wounds in between like that time. And like people would like, because the books hadn't come out yet at the time, people would have like guesses as to what was coming next. And that's actually how I learned, spoiler, I guess it's not a spoiler, but spoiler, that Snape loved Lily, because I actually saw people like write that in like fan fiction. And so then I remember like when that book came out, like the 6th or 7th book, when you find that out, I was like, I don't know, 15, 16 or something like that. And I remember being like, oh, I think that Snape loves Lily, when that was not my idea. It was like I read it like somewhere else, but I claimed it to be my own idea because I was like, I'm going to make people think that I'm like this smart. And I knew that
You're with
Snape
your
loved
friends
Lily.
like, I called it.
I
It was
called
me.
it.
I knew.
Basically, when it's like, I read this somewhere. Someone else hypothesized this and they were correct. Well, so yeah, fan fiction is actually a lot of fun. And so the history of fan fiction is really quite fascinating. It's not something I actually knew about. So it always helps to define it. And like the basic definition of fan fiction is essentially fictional writing. This was from like Wikipedia. This is like what they describe it, is a fictional writing written in an amateur capacity by fans, unauthorized by, but based on existing works of fiction. The author uses copyrighted characters, settings, or other intellectual properties from the original creators as a basis for their writing. So essentially, it's like they're using someone else's work, someone else's characters and story, to then create a new story. I think we all know that. When you think about it, though, fan fiction has existed for centuries. We like label it this way now. But like I learned doing research for this was that Shakespeare's plays were actually based off of previous characters, which is kind of nuts. Like Romeo and Juliet apparently is a plot based on an Italian tale written by a man called Matteo Bandello, who, I looked it up, he died in 1562. Shakespeare was born in 1564. The point of that being, like, while they weren't contemporaries, like let's add 20 years to Shakespeare before he wrote Romeo and Juliet. I don't know how old he was. Essentially, like it wasn't that much of a difference. Like they weren't that like far apart. And like intellectual property laws and copyright laws right now like have like 70 years before something's like in the public domain. And this was obviously before copyright law. So the point of this to say, it's like this was like copyright laws didn't exist back then, and Shakespeare just like liked the story and it basically just like wrote fan fiction off of it. And there's like other things that he did. So it just puts into perspective that like quote unquote fan fiction has existed for centuries, and in fact people have become famous off of fan fiction. And it's really only until like copyright law became more of a thing that we have like a negative perception of it, which is interesting.
I have so many thoughts running through my head. I didn't know this fact. Also, that's really interesting to think about fan fiction spans that far back and probably even before that. Maybe.
Yeah,
but like
I think so, yeah.
And it brings up a good discussion topic too, with like AI being around today, of like, is there ever an original thought, right? Because AI is just like an amalgamation of like everything that has ever existed. And I also, when I think about fan fiction, I think of like only contemporary work. I only think of like spin-offs of existing like shows and movies. But so it's so interesting to think like even back then, they were basing ideas off of other ideas, like we're inspired by other people in community. And I think that's inspiring. Like that it's okay. You kind of get like, even with the laws in place, like you can still be inspired by other works of art, and that's okay.
100%. As somebody who like produces, like I draw a lot of fan art, that's one thing, but then also like when I am trying to create like original stuff, I've always like beat myself up over this, where I'm like, why can't I have anything original? Like I've been doing a series of things of like art inspired by Taylor Swift songs, and there's always a part of me that's like, that's still not original work. But it's also, that's such a lie that we tell ourselves, that like you have to be quote unquote original, because that doesn't exist. Everything is derivative of something else. Like that's, even Shakespeare's work was derivative of something. And like nothing exists in a bubble. And even like previous to that, like the Bible. The Bible has so much fan work and fan fiction written about it. Like our famous Renaissance paintings are all quote unquote fan art of, biblical stories, right? Like none of this exists in a bubble. Like, so I think we put too much pressure on ourselves to just like be original when that doesn't exist. That's not a thing. Everything is derivative. And that's
Everything's
okay.
derivative, yeah.
Yeah. It's like a useless thing to like pressure to put on ourselves. And like not that I'm against copyright law. Like I think it is bad to just like take someone's character and like completely profit off of it. But like there is something to being inspired by others and taking a story and like changing it and like reimagining it. It's all good. That's like natural part of creativity that has existed for centuries.
Right, this is proof. Yeah,
This is
that
proof.
it's okay. Give yourself some grace. It's okay to be inspired.
Indeed, it is. It's so interesting. Yeah, like copyright law apparently didn't really start developing until like the 18th century, like 1700s, and it's been developing ever since to obviously like help protect authors' IP. But obviously, fan fiction has existed since like storytelling has begun. And some of like the earliest official fan fiction, and this was from a source called it's like Simmons Silis. This was a website I'd found. But apparently, some of the earliest fan fiction, like in modern times, was Sherlock Holmes and Jane Austen. Like some Jane Austen fans, they called themselves Janeites, and they would come together to discuss like Jane Austen's literature and often wrote fan fiction of her work, which I love because I'm a big Jane Austen fan. So good for those Janeites, good for them. And then there were also fans of Sherlock Holmes. Sherlock Holmes would also form societies and called themselves Sherlockians, which I think is hilarious because if you were on Tumblr anytime during like 2012 to 2015, during like the time where like Benedict Cumberbatch's Sherlock show came out, Sherlockians was what they called themselves also. So like history repeats itself. Do you know that show?
That's so funny. Oh my god, I was gonna say, Olivia, the Janeites and the Sherlockians were the original fangirls. They're us.
They
We're
really
all together.
They really were the original fangirls and fanboys. Janeites were probably fangirls. Sherlockians were probably fanboys. Who knows? Like, it's true.
That's amazing. Like there's been fangirls and fanboys for centuries, you guys.
There really has been. There really has been. What's so funny is like apparently these Sherlockians, they would actually sometimes send their fan fiction to Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, which I want to know what they were trying to accomplish with that. They're like, here, we wrote stories like of your own
Nuh-uh. What?
Yeah.
Really?
According to this article, that they would sometimes send it to him. So that's so funny. Good for them.
I love that concept. Like, people do that today.
They do. I mean, especially with like social media, we have so much connection to authors now that I can't help but feel like sometimes stories do, like maybe shows more so, but maybe even with books, they do get influenced by people's, like by the fans, like whether it just be like a conversation online or maybe even fan fiction. Like I wonder if there has been like a piece of fan fiction that an author's read and been like, this is a good idea, I will do this. I don't know, I have no example, but maybe it's possible.
Oh, I know that like specific in some shows, I'm forgetting which show, they would see what like the Hive had been saying. I want to say it's Succession. I don't know if it is, but like, and then that show would be inspired by like things people have said and theorized.
Yeah,
that's so interesting.
I'm sure that does happen. I have no doubt that it does. So interesting. I feel like if I had a book series and I saw someone write like a really good piece of fan fiction, I would be like, I'm gonna steal parts of this. I would maybe tell them. I would obviously probably have to tell them. Be like, I like this. I'm gonna use your idea.
Have you
Good
seen
job.
that meme on Reddit? It's like, oh, you made this? I made this. And they
I
take
made
the
this.
thing.
I made this.
I made this now.
People are creative. People are so creative.
Everyone's so
creative. It's true. But it's fun. It's cute that people have done this for centuries, honestly. And then the next big thing that like really influenced fan fiction as we understand it today was apparently Star Trek, which I've actually never seen. I've never seen Star Trek, but that show premiered in 1966, and it is often credited with popularizing modern fan fiction as we know it today. So fans of that show would often like go to conventions and they would share stories of that work through fanzines or self-published magazines. They would meet at these conventions and like read them together. And because this was like pre-internet, this was like the way that they would share these stories. So these special zines that they would like have, they were like published for the sole purpose of publishing like Star Trek fan fiction, and there it was called like Spockanalia, like, which is so funny. I don't know much about Star Trek, but I know Spock is a character, but very funny. Do you know
He's
Star
that
Trek?
live long and prosper guy.
Yeah.
I don't know much about Star Trek because growing up, I was an asshole because I was such a big Star Wars fan. I was like, I'm not gonna watch Star Trek. But then I watched the Chris Pine Star Trek movies, and I was like, okay, I'm convinced. You got me, Chris Pine, every time. And
Chris
so,
Pine will do that.
he'll do that
He will do
sometimes.
that. Yeah.
like I used to be like, I'm not gonna watch Star Trek, but no, I do like it now. But I haven't actually seen the show. But I've heard, like, I know our friend Becca likes it, so she's like been convincing me to watch it. So maybe one day.
Watch it. Did you watch like is there any modern version of it? Like, or is it just like the old television series and like that's it? Because I know there have been movies, but have they like revamped the show at all? I don't know. Yeah, I know nothing.
I don't know. I think I'd watch
Yeah.
it if they did. That'd be interesting. I don't actually know if there's been a spin-off show.
Yeah, me neither. Because I know like the only other like show like that, like Doctor Who, which also started in like 1960 something. And it did get revamped in like the late 90s, I believe, or like early odds, something like that. So that's why I was like, maybe there's a more modern version. Because I don't really like watching old timey stuff. I don't
I'm
like
the same
watching.
way. I
Yeah.
know. It's like I can tell it's all, I want to be convinced that it's real with like the modern day editing. And then but back then you're like, this is a couple people put this set together with paper. So
Yes. Like I can see the string. Like this is not good.
yeah. Yeah.
I can't get invested in this. But yeah, I'm not familiar with Star Trek at all. But interesting that it was like it had such a fan base that people wrote fan fiction. Like that's so cute. Humans are cute. We're just like adorable.
That is adorable. And I assume that like even like Sir Arthur Conan Doyle and maybe the creator of Star Trek, I wonder if they received it positively, the fan fiction. I assume so.
So it is interesting that different authors have different perceptions of fan fiction. Some are like way more receptive to it, but some authors are not. Like I read that like the Game of Thrones author, what's his name?
George R. Martin.
George R. Martin. I was like, you would know. He is not a big fan fiction fan. Like he kind of like explicitly says he doesn't like it. Same with like the author of Outlander. She's like really opposed to it. But some authors are way more receptive to it. So it kind of is like I think it just depends. I don't know.
Interesting. Yeah, I want to know
Yeah.
their reasoning. Because if I was a writer, I'd be like, this is so heartwarming. You love this so much that you
Yeah.
went and wrote a story about it. That's so cute.
Yeah, it is interesting. Like I think George R. R. Martin, what I read about him is like he just feels like it's his children. So he like is uncomfortable with the idea of like people like using his children. And I think a lot of it is around like profiting, right? Like you can't profit off of my characters, which I can understand. I can understand that perspective to some extent. But yeah, like the act of like writing fan fiction, I would think is like such an honor, right? Like you love my character so much that you like want to explore them further. Like that is such a compliment. There's like no higher compliment as an author, I would think.
That's true. What is that? Like the highest form of flattery is imitation.
Yeah, I would think so. Yeah, I mean that is the quote. So who knows? I forget what the author of like Outlander said, but I could see both sides of the argument. But I feel like for me, just based off like what we were talking about of how everything is kind of derivative, I just don't think I personally would be that upset of people like if this is a way for them to explore their creativity, I'd be like, go for it. If you need to use my characters to do that, have fun, enjoy, go for it, but to each their own, I guess. Well, continuing our timeline through fan fiction. So obviously fan fiction flourished with the creation of the internet. That's how like I discovered it, you discovered it. So up until the internet, like obviously fan fiction was distributed through these conventions, like it's the Star Trek convention. But then once it was online, obviously everybody could discover it. So fan fiction for Star Trek, Star Wars, Doctor Who, it was mainly a sci-fi genre, it sounds like it really popularized in sci-fi for, I guess, like just because it's an interesting area to discuss. And I know that sci-fi had like a big boom in like the 1960s. But then like it moved on obviously to like different genres as it grew. And with the internet, popular websites showed up to like release and publish fan fiction, such as fanfiction.net, which as shown, I had my first account in 2008, Archive of Our Own, which I actually still have an account and I do use pretty frequently now, Wattpad and DeviantArt. Those are kind of the most popular fan fiction communities. And the most popular franchises on those are Harry Potter and Twilight, those being some of the ones that like gained the most mainstream recognition, especially Twilight, as of recently. And so even some fan fiction authors to this day have like gone on to receive like massive success. And I actually have a list of books that were originally fan fiction that have gone on to be published and be books on their own, which is wild to me. Should I read them?
Yeah, I saw this list and I was like, I didn't know this at all.
Yeah, isn't it crazy? So everyone knows like 50 Shades of Grey. That's like the most popular. But that literally was just Twilight fan fiction. And she just changed the names, which is nuts. Which actually with a lot of these, that's the case. There's this other book called After by Anna Todd. I don't know this, nor was I a big One Directioner, but apparently this was a One Direction fan fiction that was on Wattpad. And it follows the romantic relationship between a college student and a fictionalized version of Harry Styles.
Stop. I didn't know about this. Oh my god.
I didn't know about it either because I'm not a big One Direction fan, so no idea this existed. But
same, but I believe it based off people that I know who are One Direction fans. I know that this is real.
Unsurprising. It's
Yes.
true. But that's wild that this was able to be published. Another one's called Carry On, which was based off, it's a fantasy series that you first read in Fangirl, another book of hers by Rainbow Rowell's the author. And it's essentially just like Harry Potter. It's like a fictional fantasy series that like it's essentially Harry Potter fan fiction. And it's mainly Harry and Draco inspired. It's like a relationship between two male characters. I read Fangirl, like that, her first book in which they mention Carry On. And as I was reading it, I was like, is this just Harry Potter? And is this just Harry and Draco? And I thought I was making it up at first. And like, no, it is. It's Harry Potter fan fiction.
Are they different names? Do they have different names?
They do. I forget their names. I could look it up. What are your names? Simon Snow is one of the characters. And it's literally about like a magical school. It's like Watford School of Magic. Like everything's the same. Super funny.
Interesting. Okay, I'll have to check it out, especially with the Fangirl. I gotta check it out too. So
Fangirl's fun. I enjoyed that book. I didn't read Carry On, but Fangirl was a fun, easy read. I enjoyed it. Another one on this list, which is bonkers to me. It's not strictly fan fiction, but apparently The Mortal Instruments. Are you familiar with The Mortal Instruments by Cassandra Clare?
Is that similar to that show on HBO? It's never mind. The Lion, the Witch, and the Road. Never mind. Okay, no.
I know what you're talking about. No, it's not. The Mortal Instruments is like, it's a really popular YA fantasy series. It did have a show on like Freeform. It's like the Shadowhunters universe. And it's about like these essentially like demon hunters. It's complicated. Either way, it's like a very popular YA series. And apparently, while it's not strictly fan fiction, it did begin as a Harry Potter fan fiction titled The Draco Trilogy before evolving into a unique urban fantasy with its own world. So that's so interesting that like she started writing a fan fiction and then it turned into something a little bit more unique. But goes to show fan fiction is where it's at. Like, that's where you gotta start.
This is proving to me that like this could help with like I know like you've wanted to like write. I think you've already started writing like a series. Like I at one point also want to write something just to see if I can. And it sounds like this could be a part of our process. Like just start have them kiss, and then you can make a book.
And kiss. It's true. It's like we put so much pressure on being so original, but like you don't know what will come up if you just start. And like, yeah, if it helps to just start writing fan fiction and then it turns into something more original, great. Like however you get there, no problem. That's fine.
Yeah. There's no one way. You can do
No,
whatever works.
it's true. Like I actually might try that. Like let's try writing some fan fiction and then see what I can change. Like, go
But
from there.
what series would you base it off of?
I have no idea.
Okay.
No idea. Yeah, we'll see. Well, who knows? But I like that idea. I know people also use fan fiction as like a writing exercise, right? Like just to practice writing, which I think is a good call. Like, because sometimes it just helps remove the barrier of I need to come up with characters and I need to come up with something. It's nice to have that like done for you and just like practice writing. Like, I think that's a good call. Like, just practice writing with characters you already are familiar with and go from there.
That's a good point. Yeah, like a writing exercise, like prompt.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's smart. And then the last book that is like very popular these days that I see a lot, and yeah, I think you're familiar with it, is The Love Hypothesis by Ali Hazelwood. And there's so many other books that are fan fiction, but this one's obviously very popular in this like new wave of Reylo fan fiction, which is Kylo Ren and Rey from Star Wars, which as a Star Wars fan, I'm sure you're familiar with. This is like people are obsessed with the ship, which I don't dislike it, but I'm just amazed at how prominent it is in our like culture. And there's like a bunch of Reylo inspired books, but this is just one of the most popular ones. And she's gone off to write like multiple books, I think, with the same characters and otherwise, but wild stuff.
I heard about this only because the Love Hypothesis is really popular. Like a lot of my friends read it, I think last year and over the past 2 years. And so that's why I learned more about it, that it was based off the Reylo fan fiction. That's so funny.
It's so funny. It's crazy. It's like, yeah, these people just wrote what they loved. They made a few tweaks. Like, so this would be what's called like an alternate universe. In the world of fan fiction, there are like tags. Are you familiar with the tags of fan fiction?
No, please explain to me.
Oh, okay. I'm excited to explain this. So when you go on like some place called fanfiction.net, there are different like or archive of our own, which is more popular now. There are like different tags you can use to like find stories that you're interested in. So like one would be an AU, which is alternate universe. So like let's say you like these characters, but you don't want it to be in the universe that they exist. You just want to like see them in a modern setting. It would be like you would tag it by AU and you would find something like that. So that's what this would be. This would be like AU Kylo Ren and Rey, essentially. So I guess it's like also how it could get past like copyright laws a little bit. You change the characters and it's an alternate universe, or you change like the names, and then you've got publishable fan fiction, essentially.
That's great. They found the loophole.
Yeah, it's just like it just the characters look the same. Like you look on the book cover and you're like, yeah, that's Kylo Ren and Rey, but they're just like in a chemistry lab or something. I don't know. But there's a lot of different tags. There's like I know we talked about it in the previous episode, or we may have cut this part out actually, where there's like sunshine and gloomy characters. There's like a bunch of like different tags that you can use to like filter down to the types of stories you're looking for on fan fiction. It has become a whole language and vocabulary in itself that I used to be more familiar with. Most of the time now I just do like I type in the ship I like or the characters, and then I do like most popular. Like that's what it is. And I actually like will remove like alternate universe because I'm like, I want them in the world that they're in. I don't care about alternate universe. I don't need that. Yeah.
Make it so I'm there again. Put me right back.
Yes. Some people actually do that too, where they'll self-insert themselves. Like that's a whole tag.
What?
Where they'll be like, yes, it would be like your name. Like it'll be like Y/N in this universe. So you would like insert your own name into into any time it says YN, and it would be like a self-insert story. This is like a new thing. And I'm like, I can't. This is a little bit too much for me.
That's going far. Yeah, okay. I can see the appeal though, for sure.
I can. Yeah. I Teach their own. I respect it. It's fine, but it's a little too much for me. But it's there. It exists.
This is tangential, but like I downloaded an app for free. I forget what it's called, but it's like after I read Akatar, I started looking at like erotic like fiction stories, just curious. And I forget what it's called, but the app, but they have stories where the person is like talking to you. So like it'd be like it's a story, it's fictional, but like the way they've written it is like you're the person that person is attracted to. Crazy.
Yes. Yeah, I've seen those before. Not surprising. I've seen this also on TikTok where there'll be like videos like a Harry Potter. I was on Draco Talk for a while. Or I think we both talked about Draco Talk for a little bit.
Yeah, because I think it started with what's the actor's name? He's on TikTok, the guy who plays Draco. And so I think that because he was like playing with people. So I thought that was interesting.
Yes, he was totally in it. But there would be like people would take clips of like Draco from the movies, and either they would insert themselves in it, like they would like record themselves, or they would like show a blank screen and it would be like you're the one. Yeah. And it's like I would watch them, like I would eat them up. I'd be like, yeah, me and Draco are in a relationship.
They're so entertaining. I know.
Some of them were so good, like so intricate. And yeah, I guess that's like a different version of fan fiction. That's all that is. It's just video. I don't know.
I was going to say, I think TikTok is bringing a new element to it. It's so interesting. Like over time, it just has different, like, right? Like from Shakespeare to like the Sherlockians to like now, like it just has different formats. The premise, like the idea is still the same though. Like we're just fangirling.
Just wanting to be a part of the story or influence it in some way. Yeah, just using the tools that we have. That's true. And
So
people have gotten famous doing it. Yeah, like either become published authors or I know some TikTok stars became famous because of their, work and producing some of those videos. And it's just there is a world out there, an economy that appreciates this type of content. It exists.
Amazing. That's the world I want to live in. I'm so glad we're here.
Same, me too. I love that people love stuff so much. It makes me happy. But yeah, that's where we are now. That's like a brief history of fan fiction. I'm sure there's more to it, but it is a fun world. And I think it has like a stigma around it. If people who are not as like who are not as chronically online as I am, maybe they have which chronically online I know means many things to many people. But if they just didn't grow up on the internet in the same way that like we did or I did, fan fiction just comes with a lot. People just assume it's like bad, poorly written, oftentimes erotic, like bad content. But actually, some of the best things I've read have been fan fiction, and it can sometimes just be incredibly enjoyable. Yeah, to like fall back into a story that you love so much with characters you're familiar with, and just get to re-engage with them in like unique ways. So I think everyone should try fan fiction. It's a great time.
I agree. And I didn't mention this earlier, but I'm super into Lore Olympus. It's like a modern day retelling of the ancient Greek gods mythology, and I think it's great. And also it's really easy to get into because it's illustrated really well. And what's the app?
I think it's on Wattpad. It's on Webtoons. It's on Webtoons.
Yeah, Webtoons. Yeah. So it's on Webtoons, and that's another great example of an app or a website that you could use to find other fangirl. What am I saying? To find other fanfics as well. So you mentioned the Marauders. Can you talk a little bit about that for Harry Potter?
Yes, so one of my favorite I have a lot of fanfics that are just like, it's hard to recommend fan fiction when you're like not into a fandom, because it's kind of like you have to be in a fandom to like a fanfic. But one of the best ones that like it's been this was published in 2009, I believe. Yes, 2009. Has not been updated since 2013, but this was Marauders fan fiction. So Harry Potter, it was a prequel following like James and Lily specifically, but like all of the Marauders, and it's unfinished. It's so sad. It has 36 chapters, but essentially it just follows like their relationship and like what the Harry Potter world looked like, before when as Voldemort was rising. And I still think about it to this day. It's been, again, like 2013, 10 years It's been 10 years since that book came out, or that since this came out, and I think about it all the time. And it's just a fantastic. It just goes to show that like fan fiction can like improve on something that you didn't know you needed. Like I became obsessed with the Marauders because of this story, and now think that the Marauders story is like more interesting than Harry Potter, which is unfair because it's not a book, but I think there's so much potential there, and that's why I want them to create a series based off the Marauders. But also, people have done it. People have created such amazing content based off of it, and so would recommend. It's called The Life and Times, and it's on fanfiction.net. I should have mentioned that earlier, but 10 out of 10.
I definitely want to check it out based off your recommendations. And other people on TikTok have talked about it as well. So I would love to read more about that.
It's a like I didn't realize the Marauders could be so interesting until I read fan fiction, and then I'm like, yeah, I think I actually like them more than the actual Harry Potter characters, which is like, yeah, a little bit unfair because they wouldn't exist otherwise. But I'm like, I just think they could be. It's such an interesting story to tell, and it only exists in fan fiction.
They gotta bring. I bet you. I wonder if the creator of that, like, I don't know, maybe there's an issue with giving them like the rights, you know?
Oh, Harry Potter is like known to be an incredibly gated like IP. J.K. Rowling is incredibly protective of her work. Yeah, very protective. And I mean, Warner Brothers, it's like it's a whole thing. There's so much money to be made in Harry Potter that they are protective of it.
Damn them.
Yeah. But I'm like, because they're making those new movies or show. They're making a show of Harry Potter. I want them to invest at least a portion of time into the Marauders. I think it would be worth it. And I think it's like a story that we deserve to hear. It could be so interesting, like a prequel to the Harry Potter series. I think it would be so fun. But yeah, those are some. That's like otherwise just explore some fan fiction. If there's a book or show or movie you really liked and you're like, I don't want to give this up quite yet. Dabble in some fan fiction. You don't know, you may find something amazing. You never know.
This is a good segue. I added a section of like what we want to be fan fiction. And so one of the things that I saw on TikTok, we talked about like people creating fan fiction on TikTok. There's a show called MasterChef in Indonesia, and people are obsessed with Chef Juna Jaj, which is like this really attractive chef, and this a woman, her name is Chef Yulita, and like people have created TikToks about them, and I want a love story book now. I think they're happily like married or in relationships, so it's not real, but like I love watching TikToks about them.
That's so funny. That exists. Like like going back to One Direction. I think people wrote like fan fiction of like Harry, and I don't know who they shipped him with, but there was someone in the band that they shipped him with. So these things exist, like real life fan fiction.
Right, real people.
It's of so real funny. People. That has its issues, but it could be. It's as long as it's like coming from a good place. I guess it's fine. I don't know.
And then they'll piece together like interactions where like, oh, clearly, like it looks like they're flirting.
I love those, like the fan videos of like, two actors like in an interview, but then they'll like pause on like a brief moment where they're like looking at each other and it's like to music. You're like, wow, they're in love. Incredible.
Yes.
Get married.
Because Oscar Isaac and what's her name? Jessica Chastain are married, happily married. But I think for the promo of their show that they did together, they
yes,
they were extra flirty. Yeah, there's that TikTok that went viral of him like kissing her arm, which is like, if I was there, I'd be like, what are you doing if I was married to Oscar Isaac? But still, I was like, wow, I ship them. Yeah. I see it.
Yes.
Chemistry.
I agree. I'm like, oh, I don't know. If I was his wife, I would be like, whoa, whoa. That's
she was there.
Much.
There's another video from that red carpet, and she's in the back just like smiling, like,
whoa. They have to be incredibly secure in their relationship then. Because like, wow. Because I was like, they're married. Like these two are married. Right. They are in love.
And like the show is called Marriage Story. So it's like they're there to promote a story where they're married and they're doing this. And
wow. Being an actor is like a mind. It's like, yeah, like that messes you up. Like how do you delineate your like social life, like your professional life and your real life? Like, wow, it's messy.
Right. I don't know. I agree. It'd be tough. And it's because you're surrounded by good looking people all the time, too. So if you're like a spouse who's like a regular person, that'd be so hard.
Yes. I mean, like, if I was being kissed like that by Oscar Isaac, I'd be like, I would leave everyone and everything I knew. Be like,
Right.
this is my husband now.
Oh, so we're
This-
married. Yeah.
we're-
If my man looked at me like that, marriage immediately.
Marriage. This is like common law marriage. You know, this is what happens. Like,
Yeah.
that's how this occurs. It's like, there's no other explanation.
Yeah.
That's funny.
What if we did an episode where we came up with a fanfic on the spot?
Whoa. I
That'd
don't
be
know if I
fun.
would be good. That would be fun. I don't know how I could do it, but that would be fun.
Let's do it. I'm just gonna say that's gonna be an episode one day. I say that we can look up like ways to create prompts, and we can like agree. We can go through the process of agreeing which story we would create a fanfic of, and maybe that's a question for people in the comments. Maybe that's like our poll. Like, what should we create a fanfic of?
That'd be interesting. Okay. Yeah, I'm not opposed. I think it would be funny to find fan fiction also and read it. Like,
That would be funny too. We should do that.
but I don't want to like embarrass anybody because anyone who puts themselves out there is great. Like, good for them. But it would be funny to find like some fan fiction and try and read it.
Yes, like if we could read Tina's erotic fan fiction.
Oh my gosh.
Hilarious.
I'm sure there's so much of that. Like, I know people have attempted to find like 50 Shades of Grey in its original version. I've actually tried. I wanted to just see it, to just like Google, like, because I think it was on fanfiction.net. I think that's where it was originally. And I'm like, I just want to find the original story for the sake of like knowing what it looked like. I'm sure it was as easy as just like find and replace, like change Bella to whatever the girl's name is. But I would love to find the original somewhere on the internet.
Is it not? And you would think it's accessible.
I think she deleted it. I think she deleted it for like copyright reasons, like so that she could publish her book. I did look this up at one point, and it's just like it's hard to find. It's harder to find than you would think. I don't think I ever found it.
So that was our episode on fan fiction. We hope you guys liked it. Thank you so much for listening or watching this week again. You can keep in touch with us and continue following us at Fangirl Feels Pod on TikTok and Instagram. And then you can watch our full videos on Olivia's YouTube channel at VVIVAA. So check that out. We have a playlist. This is our 10th episode now, which is crazy. We've been doing this since March. We've been uploading every week. And so we're happy that you're here. Thank you for making it this far. And if you got this far, leave a comment on TikTok, YouTube, and Instagram with a book emoji so that we know you're a fangirl.
Oh, I love that. I love that. A+. Good call.
Yes. We'll add you to we'll give you a shout out in our next episode. So yeah, give us a follow. Also leave us a voice message. You can do so on Spotify for podcasters. Again, you have to create an account. We're sorry about that, but we'll leave a link in the doobly-doo below. And that's our episode. Woo!
Yay!
Until y'all next
time.
Week. Yeah. Until next time. Yes.
Until next time. Yes. All right. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Yay.